Fala pessoal, tudo bem? Bem-vindos de volta aí para mais um episódio da nossa série. E hoje a gente tem uma convidada super especial, mas para poder fazer a apresentação, eu vou mudar para o inglês, porque a nossa convidada não fala português, ela é dos Estados Unidos, e aí eu faço essa introdução em inglês. So, thank you everyone for watching us, and I just want to say how honored I am to do this interview today. Today our guest is Lynne Kjolso. She's the Global VP of Corporate Sales at Microsoft. And she's been working at Microsoft for 13 years now. And her role now, she oversees the sales team across the whole world. And because of that, she has such a deep understanding about what's going on across all the regions. And I'm thrilled to have you here, Lynne. Thank you very much for accepting our invitation and welcome.
Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate the opportunity, and it's great to see you again.
Awesome. Okay, so let's start. I would like to ask you, I mean, Microsoft is it's one of the companies that are most admired across the world. Like, people really want to work in this company. And it's a very admired company. And you having a global leadership position in such a company, it is an even bigger accomplishment. So can you please tell us a little bit about your journey becoming a VP in Microsoft, and what were your biggest learnings, and a little bit about your challenges during this time?
Sure, absolutely. So as you said, I joined Microsoft 13 years ago, and I've been in the advertising business at Microsoft that entire time. I started in ad operations, actually running our editorial, so which ads run on the network and which don't, which get disapproved, and then moved into sales about 2 years after joining Microsoft. And since then have been able to lead teams all over the world, in North America, in Europe, in APAC, and LATAM, and a few years ago stepped into a global capacity. When I think about what has sort of enabled that career growth, I think it's really relevant to the time we're in today, and that is I have always been very ready to raise my hand in times of change and under challenging circumstances. So even though Microsoft is one of the most admired companies in the world, in the ads business, we're the underdog, right? To Google and to Facebook. And every couple of years, there's been a big challenge or a major transformation or a partnership with Yahoo that we were launching, or a partnership with Yahoo that we were changing. And in every time of adversity and change, I really raised my hand to take on new challenges, to do new things, and that openness to change, and that kind of having a very strong stomach for ambiguity. Those are the things that I think have set me apart. And because I was willing to take all of these risks and go for some of the more challenging assignments, that helped me build a resume that ultimately, when a role like I have today, a global sales leadership role came about, I was the right candidate for that. So my 2 cents is, taking advantage of times like this to really stand out and demonstrate your leadership.
So, Lynne, I'm pretty sure that your background in sociology, anthropology, philosophy has helped you get where you are today. And can you tell us a little bit how does it help you to work with people and in sales, and how this different, not traditional background has helped you to reach where you are?
Yes. I'd say I'm probably not alone in having, I think there are many people in media who have a liberal arts degree and who found their way into advertising. I was actually a philosophy professor before I started my business career, and which is a little unusual. I think that those things help you because ultimately philosophy is all about the art of persuasion and making a compelling argument. And that is what we're doing in business all the time. Whether you're talking to a client or you're talking to your boss or your leadership team, you're always assembling the facts, putting a strong business case together, and then, going for it and articulating it passionately. And so I learned a lot of that from my academic background. I would also say that my time teaching has been very, very valuable in sales because my job as a teacher was to take super complex ideas and to make them accessible and to help people try them on and to facilitate dialogue. And ultimately, that's what you're doing in a client scenario as well, is helping to facilitate a good conversation, trying to get to the heart of the matter, and synthesizing the complex. So even though there are a lot of us in good company in advertising who come from a liberal arts background, but I've felt that it's helped me very well.
And I remember the last time that we met, we're having lunch and you were explaining a little bit about your routine pre-crisis and how much you were traveling to oversee everything. And can you tell us a little bit how, your routine has changed a lot, but what did you have to do to be on top of everything that you have to do since you don't have the opportunity to meet them?
Yeah, it's been crazy the last 3-4 months, however long it's been. I've lost track of time like everyone else. Has been pretty crazy because I was traveling, as you know, Andre, at least 40% of my time. And I have teams all over the world, in Europe, in APAC and LATAM, and all over North America. So to go from 40% travel and, all my time in some office to 100% at home was like putting on the brakes. You know what I mean? I didn't even have an office set up at home. I didn't have a proper desk. My Wi-Fi is still spotty. So, I learned pretty quickly a couple things. Number one, I learned to put boundaries in place because, for me, like I need downtime to be able to perform well during the day. And so I had to, get comfortable not looking at my phone at night and carving out an actual weekend and not just give into that temptation to kind of work all the time. And I've also had to structure my day differently. So I have to, I'm sure we all feel like 8 hours of back-to-back conference calls on video calls, it's not anybody's dream job. And so I intentionally break things up and will kind of work out midday and, walk my dogs in the morning. I make a point now of cooking dinner with my husband after work, just to put bookends on the day and break it up a little bit so that I have the energy I need to show up well for my team in the meantime. And then it's just juggling a lot of time zones. So some days I'm up very early so that I can engage with Europe and my Latin teams, and some days I pivot late so that I can engage with my APAC teams.
I can only imagine how hard it has to be to juggle, because I didn't think about that, because before you're traveling, so you have time to adapt when you need to talk to them and everything. But now you're in the same place and then you have to work really early and then really night. My God, this is intense.
Yeah, it's been intense. Yeah, but I have a great team and everybody's been very understanding of each other and we've all really worked to support each other. So that's great. But the hard thing is a lot of teams have done like virtual happy hours, but I can't get my team together for a virtual happy hour because if it's happy hour for one group, it's like morning coffee for the other. Trying to figure that out. That's been actually one of the biggest challenges.
Awesome. And how do you think your team is handling this home office thing, and what have you been discussing what are the plans to the future, because everyone is seeing that you can work from home and be productive, and I don't know, there's so much going on right now. What are you guys discussing about this topic right now?
Yeah, it's a great question. Our teams have just responded magnificently, I would say. Switching to the remote environment, I think my teams, my media teams have been more productive because you know what? They really want to prove that they can be as productive, if not more, from home than in the office. And they've done it, in terms of our client engagement metrics and all of that stuff. They're knocking it out of the park, as we would say in the US. And the team have been really good about finding ways to support each other through the virtual settings and to connect with each other, because everybody is juggling so much right now with their home life, with their kids, homeschooling, work, and we've got a lot of people who live alone, and the pandemic has been very difficult for people who live alone. So the team has also been really, really good at just reaching out to their colleagues and supporting each other. In terms of what the future looks like for Microsoft, we're a global company, and the company is tracking the public health data in every country very specifically. And we're very slowly, only in a handful of geographies, starting to bring people back to offices, but we call it a soft open. And so, only a small percentage of folks are going back to physical offices, only where, all of those public health milestones have been met. There are all kinds of physical distancing measures and safety precautions at the office. You can't eat in a cafeteria anymore. You can't meet one-on-one in an office. And it's 100% voluntary. So, for the vast majority of Microsoft employees, we expect that we will be working from home for many more months. And I don't think we'll ever get back to the days of expectation that people are in the office 5 days a week, 8 hours a day. I think this has fundamentally changed our expectations about office life and travel, quite frankly.
Yeah, we feel the same here at Recon. Like, we were kind of resisting to do this change, but afterwards, what we see that we can accomplish, it doesn't matter where we are, is just impressive, and it's impossible to go back to how we were before, right?
Yeah.
And Lynne, Microsoft was founded in 1975, and of course, it has seen and overcome many major market movements. It has been to other crises, and it has somehow revolutionized like the global market several times. And in your opinion, what are the main characteristics a company must have in order to overcome these challenges and to be a relevant player in the market across the time?
Yeah, I think a couple things. I'd say not all of those years have always been great years. So Microsoft has gone through a lot of ups and downs. And I think if you look particularly at the last 5 or 6 years since our CEO, Satya Nadella, came into his role, it's all about the things that Satya talks about. It's about living a growth mindset, having deep, deep empathy, and understanding that it's our job as a technology company to innovate and not to be stuck and wedded to the past or to tradition. So I always tell people, Satya, in his very first email as CEO to all Microsoft employees, his first sentence was, "Our industry does not respect tradition. It only respects innovation." And so I think, that's the role of a technology company, is to push the envelope and to always be seeking what's new and what's game-changing. And to be able to do that, you have to be really humble. You have to admit that you don't know everything, that no matter how many great things you've done in the past, it doesn't mean, you're guaranteed a good future. And you have to be able to reinvent yourself. And so that's where the growth mindset comes in, this notion of always being learning and being willing to show up and be vulnerable and admit that you don't know the answer. It's about rewarding people for taking risks and learning, and not rewarding people for showing up and being perfect and buttoned up. And it's really about building a diverse and inclusive company so that you're sourcing a great ideas from, the whole globe's worth of people and perspectives. So, the most powerful thing Satya has done to power Microsoft's business success has been to really transform the culture. And that's all down to the growth mindset, embracing empathy and core values, and really building a more diverse and inclusive company.
And when we're talking about that, we're talking about culture, and it's I love this theme. I think it's fascinating, and I can only imagine how hard it is to develop the right culture in a company that is as big as Microsoft. Because I don't know, here in Raccoon we are in 3 different offices in the same city. And we already have problems because of that. When we're talking about offices across the globe, how you, as someone that is in a leadership position, helps to build the right culture across these themes that you just mentioned?
It's a great question. It takes a ton of work and effort, and it takes a long time. Cultural change takes years because it is hard. The CEO can say, I want you to operate with a growth mindset, but each of our 150,000 employees have to figure out what that means for themselves. And that does take time, and it takes repetition. To give you a couple examples of things that I think Microsoft has done really well, like last year, for instance, we re-rolled out our company values. So we have values of respect, integrity, and accountability. And in a period of 6 months, we trained all the leaders, like myself, to facilitate a 4-hour class on core values and what they mean and how they show up in people's behaviors and practices. And in 6 months, every single employee in the company had that values conversation with one of their leaders, and they were very, very powerful. And that took a lot of tops-down effort from Satya and the senior leadership team to make it a priority. But it took a lot of hard work on the part of managers and employees to engage in that dialogue. So I think you need to do both. You need to have the right messages from the top, and you've got to have you have to hire people who want to lean in and believe in the direction and want to be a part of the change.
Awesome. And just before you were mentioning diversity. And
Yes.
Right now, we are in a time of great social unrest and sadness regarding diversity, inclusion in the whole world, with everything that is happening in the US around the Black community. Here in Brazil, also a lot of movement across this theme. How are you using these events as a catalyst for change?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it's a very important question. And Satya put out a communication to all Microsoft employees just last week around how the company needs to do better. I think this to me is one of the most significant moments that I can point to in my life, in my experience, where the questions are so urgent, and problems and systemic issues of racism and inequality that have been there for years are coming to light, and we're having honest conversations about them in a way that I haven't seen in my lifetime. And I think it's paramount that we seize the moment and really have those honest conversations and have the courage to be uncomfortable and the courage to maybe get it a little bit wrong for the sake of really advancing the movement. But for us, it really begins, one of the things we're doing is really beginning with making sure people use this as an opportunity to educate themselves. And so June 19th, this coming Friday, it's called Juneteenth in the US, and it's a big day. It's the commemoration of the ending of slavery in the United States. And Microsoft, like a lot of companies, is marking that day, and we have asked all employees to set it aside as a day of learning and reflection and potentially activism if you want to support the movement. But, there are no meetings. We're not doing any kind of work that day. It's all for learning and reflection. Another thing, we have heard very loudly from our communities of racial and ethnic minorities is don't make the community do all the work, right? For too long, we have looked to people of color to do the educating for us and to drive these conversations for us. And we cannot continue to ask them to do that. Obviously, we want them to be part of the conversation, but they can't carry all of the load. And so they're asking us as allies and leaders to help them carry the load and to educate ourselves so that we can guide these conversations. So we have every manager in my division right now driving a book club with their team on a book that is about race or systemic racism or diversity and inclusion, where every manager will kind of step into that role of teacher and facilitator, and the entire team will go on a journey together to educate themselves. So I think it starts there. I don't think that's enough. I think we have a lot of work we need to continue to do to make Microsoft employees reflect the diversity of our communities, to build an inclusive culture. And we have more to do as we support things like criminal justice reform and organizations that are activating against the systemic racism. So those are some things we're doing, and we like to say we're not done. We still have a lot more to do.
Yeah, but it's awesome to hear, and I'm really happy to hear what you guys are doing, because a company like as Microsoft has such a power to change how people think and to influence. So of course you have to be a role model for everyone, and like acting fast and doing things fast as you guys are doing is just incredible. Congratulations on that.
Thank you. Thank you.
And Lynne, we're living weird times right now because of many things, but specifically because of COVID-19, it has been impacting several businesses across the globe, all industries. But for Microsoft, which is one of the largest and most modern companies in the world, how it has impacted your business? What are the challenges that this crisis brought to you?
Yeah. I'd say, flipping a 150,000 person company to 100% remote work with no travel, that just taking care of our employees in the right way, especially in the first couple weeks of the pandemic, was a massive logistical challenge. Thinking through our retail stores and the decision to close those down to protect employees and customers, making sure our data centers that power Azure and our cloud are running, but running in a safe way. Like just the sheer logistics of what we've had to do have been huge. And we've had our executive vice president of strategy, Kurt Del Bene, running all of that effort for the company. But for our clients, it's been massive go time because every part of the company has been affected differently. So, if we were actually in a pretty good position as a technology company to shift to 100% remote work overnight, right? Because everybody had a laptop, everybody had good internet access at home. We all were used to things like Microsoft Teams and video calls. So, we could pivot pretty quickly. But our company has been rallied around helping first responders, like helping hospitals that needed to figure out how to do telehealth, overnight, helping them figure that out, helping schools shift to e-learning, helping companies shift to, get Microsoft 365 finally downloaded and shift to things like Microsoft Teams, which has better security than some of our competitors, like all of those shifts to help a vast array of companies, organizations, healthcare, education move online has been a massive effort. And we're seeing the results. Our cloud services in our last quarterly earnings, are up tremendously. Our Office 365 is growing, gangbusters. Xbox is growing, and then parts of the company like advertising, just like every other advertising platform, we definitely saw a huge pullback in spend. The good news is, I would say, particularly in the last couple of weeks, and particularly in markets where the COVID crisis has peaked and is starting to, decline, we are starting to see the recovery. We're starting to see the return to kind of normal online behavior, normal search and click behavior. And so we do see some really good signs of recovery. But it's been a variety of impacts across the spectrum of businesses at Microsoft.
It's such a large responsibility that you have, because like your clients, they are across all the industries, and they see you as a partner to, like, when they need to do this change, and it has to be fast. And it's, I just imagine how overwhelming it can be at some times to deal with like the magnitude of you have to deal. And do you think, we've been discussing this a lot here, do you think that some of the behavior change that we're seeing right now, I mean, the online adoption and people spending more time online and everything, this is something that it's never going to go back to how it was before this crisis? Or do you think, no, maybe after 2 years from now, when everything is fine again, people are just going to go back to their habits of consuming and everything?
Yeah, it's such a great question, because from the data I've seen so far, you could go either way. Like, we definitely see a normalization of consumer online search behavior, for instance. Like, it's going back to pre-COVID levels, and patterns are shifting. But I think for businesses and for advertisers, the world has fundamentally changed, and I don't think it goes back to where it was. I think, the drive to put your business online and to make sure you can reach your customers and audience online has just been supercharged in a way. Satya says we've basically seen 2 years of digital transformation in like 2 weeks. You know what I mean? So companies that were not yet on the bandwagon of, figuring out their cloud strategy, figuring out remote work, figuring out their online presence and their online marketing, man, those have become critical priorities for every business. And one of the interesting things is, one of the segments I manage is SMB, including our new signups to Microsoft Advertising. And we've actually seen more. We expected SMB as a segment to suffer the most in these last couple months. It's actually been outgrowing all the other segments, the more established segments, and the number of new customers interested in our digital marketing services is actually increasing. So to me, that is a signal that there's a lot of pent-up demand for companies of all sizes to bring their business online, and there's a lot of opportunity we all, as a marketing community, need to tap into and need to help businesses sustain in this new environment.
And how do you think, what do you think the companies, they have to do to embrace the opportunities that are showing up? Like, because we're talking about digital transformation and everything, but what do you think that has to be the priorities of the companies right now if they want to make the change that they need to keep their business alive?
Yeah. I think, the core kind of web presence and how that's reflected in their, in their search strategy and their social strategy is primary. But then equally important is the e-commerce infrastructure, right? Like, what is the version, whether you're a, brick and mortar store or a services company or even a restaurant, you've got to think through, what does e-commerce look like for you? And do you have it enabled? And is it easy for customers to buy from you? I mean, as I've thought about the local businesses, just as a consumer, that I've wanted to support in times like this, and I've gone to their websites, I mean, my God, so bad, so bad, so many opportunities to improve things like their site search and their product catalog and shopping ads and, all the things we talk about as marketers. We talk about it and we maybe feel self-serving because we just want to sell more ads. But honestly, those things are really, really critical for any merchant or any business to be able to sell and do commerce online. So paying attention to those e-commerce fundamentals, I think, is more important now than ever before.
Very good, very good. And Lynne, I want to do one last question for you.
Yes.
You spoke a little bit about how broad is the range of services and how Microsoft help clients across all industries, and you have so many solutions, B2B, B2C, and all of that. And we are always very curious to know, what are the next steps? What are you guys planning to the future? Where do you think the future is going, and where Microsoft is investing time, money to develop?
Yeah. I think one category that is obviously going through a massive transformation is retail. Right. And so, we just talked about the shift to online, the shift to e-commerce. We are putting, particularly in the online and the advertising business, a ton of emphasis on retail as a category, thinking through kind of the whole shopping experience, thinking about merchant tools, that we can provide, thinking about e-commerce tools and monetization tools that we can apply through. We purchased a company called Promote IQ in the last year that provides commerce marketing solutions for online retailers, as well as our things like, Microsoft shopping campaigns and things like that. And so that is a category that I think is fundamentally changed by this COVID moment, and that it is ripe for a lot of disruption and a lot of evolution through technology. So that's one that we're very, very focused on. And I would say the entire tech industry is also ripe for innovation and ripe for adoption. And so, we are just seeing this whole shift to online has not only, benefited companies like Microsoft in a lot of our business lines, but, we see that whole tech and telco category growing really fast. And, maybe sure, some of the hardware sales have sort of, plateaued off after the couple days everybody went and bought their second monitor. But tech and telco, we continue to see is a huge growth area. So those are definitely scenarios that we're investing in right now.
Very good, very good. Lynne, it's just always a pleasure to talk to you, to hear how you as a business leader and how you as Microsoft are dealing with everything that is going on, different times, and we have to adapt very fast. And it was such a pleasure to have you here. I just want to thank you again for taking the time to talk to us. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much. It's been my pleasure. It's been my honor. And I look forward to seeing you in person one of these days.
Yes, please. Thank you, Lynne.
Thanks so much,
everyone. Thank you, everyone. We see you next week with a new episode. Thank you.